man, I'm so ready for you guys to listen to this episode. So Arian is one of my dear friends. I'll just tell everyone that's listening, it's rare to find another entrepreneur, another business owner that you just connect with at a very real level. And Arian is that guy. I'm so thankful for him as a person, for him as an entrepreneur, for what he's trying to accomplish. I really cherish this man, and I love the opportunity to get to chat with him. It was exceptionally special to me, and I'm just excited for you guys to get introduced to him and really experience his wisdom, his experience, and everything that he has going on. So let's get into it.
Good, man. I like the shades. You're in a sunny location?
Yeah, buddy, I'm at the lake house, man. So
Oh,
here's
fun.
here's here's the uh here's the view, man.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So this is the Texas place.
Oh, very
So
fun. Nice.
yeah, man. Yeah. How's life? How are you?
Good. Good. Life is good. Life is good.
Yeah.
I feel like it's about to get very busy, but it's been good.
What's going on?
Just like a bunch of I feel like it's the calm before the storm, just like a
Yeah.
bunch of like travel and stuff coming up. So this upcoming weekend, we're gonna head out to Indy and go to the Indy 500. So we'll be in Indianapolis.
Whoa.
So we're excited for that. For Memorial Day weekend, and then we just have like a bunch of like family stuff coming up. So
Amazing.
uh, my fiance, her dad turned 70 uh, 2 weeks ago, and so we were out in Vegas
Wow.
not last weekend, the weekend before that, to celebrate with him. And so it's kind of like we're entering the period where the past few months it was kind of calm and it was like nice where we were in Boston every weekend, and now I think going forward, basically through the end of the summer, it's like almost every other weekend there's like something going on. So
Yes.
it's gonna get busy.
I love that, man. Well, dude, I didn't even know that you were engaged. That's amazing.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, I've been engaged for 3 years, so
Okay, got it. All right,
it's
awesome.
nothing new. But we're gonna finally get married this year. We're eloping internationally, so that'll happen later this summer,
Sick.
and then we're gonna come back and have a party here in Boston with everybody.
Oh, dude, that's amazing.
Yeah, so that's our plan.
I love it, dude. I love it. Well, man, what's by the way, this is the podcast. If you're like, hey, when does it start? It's already started.
Oh, good. I love it.
um, so dude, you're like doing the thing, running IgnitePOST. How long have you been doing it now?
Let's see. We started IgnitePOST kind of in its form as it is right now in 2019. So
Jeez.
just
That
before
was
the pandemic.
Yeah, that was a hell of a year to launch, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's all about timing, I've been told.
Let's Yeah, man. That's amazing. So, are you still enjoying it? Like, is it still something that, because obviously, like, the idea is the idea, and the idea is something you still believe in and all that, but like, are you actually enjoying the process of running the business and doing the things?
Absolutely, yeah. So, I mean, here's the thing, like the business now has gone through a bunch of different evolutions. So,
Right.
starting when we did just before the pandemic, it's affected the business in a bunch of different ways, but you know, as with anything, it's never a straight line, right? Whenever you start a business, it's
Yeah.
never a straight line,
Right.
and this is no exception. So, starting in 2019, our target market changed dramatically, like from going from 2019 to into the pandemic. That really kind of forced our hands and like forced
Yeah.
some changes in terms of who we were actually working with. Um, but I'm still having a blast. So,
Mm,
it's just really cool going from a business, like taking something where it goes from just an idea and you're like, oh, I think that this would be a good business that would bring value to people and
right.
businesses, and let's start and kind of let's go, and going from that one or two person kind of operating shop to now growing the team. So like now I'm at a point where there's a team around me, and it's
Isn't
not
that
just kind of
great?
you're not a one man band
That's
anymore, so that's
right.
awesome. Yeah.
That's
So
awesome.
that the process I really enjoy. So
Yeah.
that's one thing I really enjoy, and then the other thing too is just talking to customers.
Yeah.
Just because of the nature of our business, we end up talking with a lot of different folks in a lot of different industries, and seeing them apply our technology in a lot of kind of unique, fun ways. So I think that's been really cool as well. So I'm having a blast running
How many? Okay,
IgnitePOST for sure.
so the last time that I talked to Anda, I think she said that you guys had like more than a dozen machines now and more than a dozen robots. Like, where are you guys at? Like, give me the
Oh
lowdown, man.
yeah,
Like,
no,
what's going
but
on?
we passed that. We passed that a while ago. We're up
Okay.
past 20 now. I
Good
lost count.
grief.
We were at a point where we were like, naming all the robots, and we would have like when we would, get a new robot, we would kind of have like a naming ceremony and everything. And it's at the point now where like our fulfillment and operations team just kind of names them as needed, because
Wow.
there's like we can't keep up. We can't
Yeah,
go through the kind of formal process like we did before. We still like to have fun with it.
for sure.
So they definitely all have names. They all have personalities too, which is also pretty fun. But yeah, no, we're cranking for sure.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. I love that. Well, dude, one of the things we talk a lot about on the podcast is like, because you're successful, you're crushing it, you're doing your thing. Ignite Post keeps growing. It's awesome. One of the things that I like to talk about is like the inner work that people do to get their business successful. Because everybody talks about like, hey, what'd you do for sales? What'd you do for marketing? And that stuff is important. How do you run your operations? And at the same time, it's like there's I don't know if you've experienced this. I know that I have. There's like a journey that you go on personally when you're running a company. So I'd love to hear just a little bit about what it's personally been like internally over the past 4 or 5 years. Because I know that you started in 2019, but it's not like this
Yep.
idea, I'm sure, extended longer than that. So I'm just curious, wherever you want to go, man, whatever you want to talk about, I
Yeah.
want to hear about it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I started like the common thread in my life is really this idea of personalization. So even before IgnitePOST, the company that I started and ran before this was a company called CoachUp, and we basically were a one-on-one private sports coaching marketplace that was connecting athletes and private coaches all across the nation. And the business is still around and still growing, doing great. But that's kind of the genesis behind why I decided to really move forward with IgnitePOST, because it's
Yeah.
almost taking that the whole idea behind Coach Up was that in order to get better at any sport, it's this kind of idea that the one-on-one personalization is really kind of what gets you the best results. And so I said, all right, how do I take that and kind of lift that up to the next level? And then that's why that was one of the things, one of the genesis behind the idea of IgnitePOST, which is this idea of how do we let brands have that same kind of one-on-one personalized feel at scale. And so that journey was really cool to kind of, and I think it was an advisor at some point that kind of pointed that out. Like I didn't connect those dots, but he was like, you do know that you have this kind of, theme of personalization going on in
Yeah,
your life with the things that you work on. So I thought that was really cool.
that is cool.
So that was kind of one thing, but then
Why?
for me,
Why? But
oh
wait,
yeah, go
hey,
ahead.
before you go anywhere, because like I think that's worth talking about, man. Like, why is that significant to you? Because like anyone could be like, well, dude, personalization's cool because it's helpful in marketing and like it. But it seems like there's like a real grounded feeling in you of like, no, the personalization matters to me.
Yeah.
So what is that, man?
Honestly, I've never given it thought until just now, where when you ask the question. So I love it. Honestly, I think it comes down to the amount of impact that it has on your life. Like as with anything, our
Mm,
experiences shape us kind of going
yeah,
forward. And
yeah,
so it's speaking back to the last business, the whole reason why I started that was because I was a perfect example of what that kind of one-on-one personal coaching could do.
yeah.
So I went to school at BU, Boston University. I ended up sailing on their varsity sailing team. I was really into sailing. I still am. But it was really cool because not a single other person in my family knows how to sail. They know nothing about the sport. They're not involved in it at all. And really, I got involved in it literally just because when I was little, I grew up in a town, and at the end of our street there was a summer camp that taught sailing and sailing lessons. And I was like, I want to go and try that out. And
That's
then I ended up
cool.
really liking it. And then I wanted to get into the competitive aspect of it because by nature, I'm just a competitive person. I enjoy playing sports. I like competing. And my parents were at a loss, and they said, I have no idea how to help you out. So literally they opened the phone book back in the days where we had phone books, and like literally
Remember
started
those?
calling. Yeah, I know. Literally started calling local college coaches that they could find
Wow.
and paid to have like coaches come.
Wow.
And then from that experience, I was able to, you know, really get into the sport. I was able to really hone my skills at the sport. And then it ended up, that's one of the reasons why I chose to go to BU and stay in college. But it had a huge effect on my life because now I have a lot of friends that are now lifelong friends that I've met, that I've known since I was, 7 years old, that we grew up competing and sailing together. Some we then sailed on the same team together, and then, continue to be friends now. So I think that's kind of one thing, is just our previous experiences shape our lives. And so that the whole idea of this kind of idea of personalization having such a big impact going forward is probably one of the things that I would say, like, why that's something that kind of grounds me, that I keep coming back to.
Your parents sound amazing. Are you still close with them?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
They're awesome. They're the reason why I'm here and able to kind of do this, and they've been super supportive. So
What
yeah, parents
what
are
did
awesome.
what did they do for work when you were growing up, or still?
Yeah, so my mom was a medical lab tech before she was a medical lab tech until my sister was born. So I'm the oldest of two kids, and then
Nice.
after my sister was born, she decided to put her career on hold, and then basically became a full-time mom and raised us. And then my dad was an electrical engineer, so he
Oh, wow.
actually worked in the aerospace industry for probably like 15, 20 years, and then ended up leaving and actually starting his own aerospace company. So, same thing, kind of
Damn.
entrepreneur, and built that company
How
up, which
how old were you
probably
when he did
worked at
that?
I was in middle school when he left to like start his own thing. So
That's amazing.
yeah, so from a very early age, I got a very inside look at what it
Yeah.
takes to kind of, like, from the ground up build a company.
Damn.
And he built it for 20 years, and then ended up selling it and retiring it really just a few years ago. So
Amazing.
he's,
I love
yeah,
it.
been in that industry since, that I can remember.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right. So we're talking about personalization, and that was a great, thank you for sharing, by the way. That was awesome.
Yeah, of course.
What are some other things, what are some other growth points that you've had personally to kind of get to where you are? Because and it's interesting, man. Like, I am obsessed with this because no one talks about this, but we all experience it. And it's I've been coaching and mentoring agency owners. I don't know that you and I have ever talked about. Well, I guess we have talked about this. Yeah,
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
and one of the things that's been interesting for me, brother, is they're like, they'll come to me and we'll start working together, and I'll be like, all right, so what's your personal development like? They're like, what do you mean? And they're like, I mean,
Yeah.
I listen to podcasts, I work out like twice a week. I'm like, cool, what else? And they don't have anything. And I'm like, okay, now let's do an experiment. And this is one of my favorites. I'm like, pull out your phone, little distraction rectangle. How many hours are you spending on it just in the past
Yeah.
week? And so it's so funny, man. Like, most of the people that I talk to, they're like 8 hours, 12 hours, 6 a day. I'm like, okay, I can find you 4 hours. Like, just cut out 4. I'm not even saying like cut it all
Right.
out. And they're like,
Yeah.
well, what am I going to do? And I'm like, anything else. And it's so funny. And they're like, well, why would I do that? I'm like, because listen, you want to have $1 million agency, right? And they're like, yes. I'm like, okay, so that's only 3% of agencies ever make it that big. Only 7% of any company in any industry ever makes it to $1 million plus in the US in a year.
Really?
Yeah,
That's a good stat. I didn't know that.
yeah. And so I'm like, so you want
That's
to be,
crazy.
isn't that nuts? I mean,
Yeah.
it feels nuts. I'm like, so you want to be in the top 7% of all companies, the top 3% of all agency owners. What do you think that those people do with their time? And it's a total mind shift for them, man. And they're just like, oh my God. Yeah. And I'm like, so how much time do you think they spend on their phone? And they're like, I don't know. And I'm like, guess. And they're like, like 3 hours. I'm like, great. Then you don't spend more than 3 hours on your phone in a day. And
Yeah.
so it's just fun. So anyway, so this is why this is important, is because there's all these little habits and things that people do unconsciously or sometimes consciously. And I'm like, that's actually affecting in a negative or positive direction your success. So There's a reason
Yeah.
why I'm obsessed with this, man.
No, I love it. And that kind of rings true for me too. I have this whole concept of like, trust but verify, uh,
Yes.
which is something that I've always kind of come back to and you know, fallen back on as the team has kind of grown bigger and bigger, because, that's just, as a business owner, that's one of the things you've got to do, right? You start out where you're doing everything, and it's very counterintuitive to anyone that's ever worked in like corporate America, because typically as you progress and as you climb the ladder, et cetera, you go through it gaining responsibilities and getting more things to do.
Right.
When you start a business, it's the exact opposite, right? You
Yeah.
start with everything to do, and your job is to shed things as you go.
Yeah.
And so that was one of the big, I guess, learning kind of lessons or things that I constantly have to remind myself with is the team that I'm relying on, the team that I'm putting around me. The whole idea is to shed responsibility and to allow them to kind of take things over. And
Yep.
so, a lot of people have trouble letting go of things because they're so used to doing everything themselves. But that's something that, I constantly have to remind myself of, okay, the team is around me to help me shed these things so that we can grow the business and get to the next level. So that was definitely one thing. The whole kind of concept of we're purposely gonna let somebody else take over, and we're gonna trust that they're gonna do the right things and kind
How
of
did
let it
you
go.
how did you do that? Because the reason why I asked that, man, is like I literally had a conversation with somebody on the podcast very recently about that, and she was just going, I know, and she's very successful, incredibly intelligent, and she's like, I could use some help, but I'm terrified to hire someone.
Yeah.
And so I gave her some thoughts and some advice, but I'm really interested in like what's trust but verify is obviously a part of that approach, but I'm curious what got you there to the point where you're like, I have to give this away. Like it's no longer like I want to keep this. It's like I have to give it away.
Yeah. Well, so honestly, this actually ties back to the question that you asked about my parents. So when I was really young, I asked my dad about some resources that would be good to look into if I was going to start my own business. And one of the things he gave me was a book to read that was called The E-Myth by Mike Gerber,
Oh, I love the
which is like
E-Myth,
kind of
man.
a classic. And so the thread that kind of runs through that whole book is to design a business that can run without you, that kind of operates without you. Because the whole idea is, if the business can't operate without you, then you don't have a business, you have a job, and you can just go get
Right.
any job you want. So if
Right.
you really want to start a business, the whole goal is to build it in such a way that it will operate without you.
Right.
And so that's something that, kind of really hit hard for me, that I constantly keep in mind of, listen, I'm building a business that needs to operate without me. And the only way to do that is by definition to not be the person that does everything. And so that's kind of my catalyst that I use to really kind of give things away. And then, to go back to one of your earlier questions, my philosophy is actually to spend a lot of time out of the office and away from the office purposely, and let the team run the business. Because
Right.
one, it shows that really I trust them to actually do what needs to be done and run the business. But two, it also gives me some visibility into things that have to be fixed or have to be worked on. So if you spend time away from the business where you're not accessible, and then you come back and you say, okay, what things worked well and what things didn't, what fell apart, and what do we have to work on? It's
Yeah.
actually a way to make your business better and stronger. So
Yeah.
I kind of use it twofold, kind of two sides of the coin. One, spend time away from the business and recharge and kind of work on yourself. And two, do
Yeah.
it in a way that will actually help the business be better in the long run.
That's brilliant, man. I love that. So, okay, so what are the things that you do to recharge? Like, okay, so hey, I'm gonna go take some time away from the business. Do you have practices? Is it different every time? Like, talk to me about it, man.
Yeah, well, so on the personal side, I have a lot of just kind of personal hobbies that I like, and it really just kind of depends on the time of the year. So
Sick.
I talked a little bit about sailing, right? So
Yeah.
that's still a big part of my life. So
When do you
uh,
when do you do that? I mean, like, is that obviously it's cold as hell in Boston for a significant portion of the year. When sailing seasons start and end?
So I have become a fair weather sailor, but if you would have talked to me earlier, like handful of years ago, I literally would sail year round. I would do frostbiting up
Whoa.
here. I know you're going to think I'm crazy, but
Oh,
some of the best, most competitive sailing that I've done up here in New England has actually been winter frostbiting. Um,
wow.
through the winter. And so it
Wow.
happens out in Boston Harbor. They use an IC, an inner club, which is the worst boat you could possibly use in the winter because it's a dinghy and you're low to the water, so you get
Yeah.
wet. And when it capsizes, because they do capsize, the whole thing fills up with water and basically like quasi sinks, and you have to be towed in to the dock and like bail your boat out. So not the ideal boat to use in the winter, but that's what they use. So I used to sail like year round. Now I'm a fair weather sailor, and I mostly sail in the warmer months, so in the summertime.
Yeah.
So I don't do that anymore. And I kind of now split my time between both racing and competing, and also just kind of cruising and enjoying because there's so many like fun places to cruise around
Oh,
in
yeah.
Boston in the harbor. So that's kind of my summer activity. And
Cool.
then in the winter time, I'm a big skier, so I'm really into skiing. Uh, Try to get a couple of trips out west every year. So either to Colorado, British Columbia, Europe when I can swing it, and then kind of in between, just shoot up to Vermont and New Hampshire
Sick.
and get some good turns in up there. So those are kind of like my two primary things that I do, and then kind of sporadically throughout the year, kind of peppered in everywhere. I also am a recreational pilot, so I like to fly around and zip around in the plane.
What are you flying?
So I have a 2004 Cirrus SR-22, which is a
Ooh,
little
beautiful
prop
plane.
four-seater prop plane.
Dude, I don't know if we've ever talked about this. I own a flight school with my brother in
You
Texas.
did. That's right.
Yeah.
Valentine Academy or Valentine Flight School or
Fly,
something, right?
fly Valentine. Yeah, yeah, man.
Fly
And
Valentine. That's right. Yeah, yeah.
dude, that's so funny. You probably told me that you fly and it just went in one ear and out the other. Dude, that's amazing. So like,
Yeah.
do you guys take that places? Is that like hey, the weather's nice, we're gonna fly VFR, like, or like, where do you take it,
Yeah.
man?
All over. So both. So it's really cool to have a plane up here in the Boston area because there's a lot of fun places that you can get to very easily
Yeah,
with a small plane that would be a total pain to get to if you didn't have one. So we do a lot of trips like that where we'll say, oh, hey, the weather's nice today. Let's fly out to like Martha's Vineyard and grab lunch. Or like same thing with like Nantucket or even anywhere on the Cape. So anywhere on the Cape is super easy for us to get to
yeah,
in like, 15, 20 minutes that if you had to drive or take the ferry, it's like a couple hours to get there.
it's a game
So
changer.
we do a lot of that. And then honestly, the reason that I really got, that pushed me over the hurdle to really get my license was my family lives in New Jersey, in southern New Jersey, and my fiance, her family lives in Buffalo and North Carolina. And so those are like very, very common areas that we like to go and
Yeah,
visit. And again, like it's one of those things where it's close enough that flying commercial almost doesn't save you a lot of time.
that's
It's
right.
at it's at this
That's
like
right.
awkward. There's like this awkward distance where it's probably like a 6 or 7 hour drive to
Yeah,
either Buffalo or to southern New Jersey, where it's like, okay, do I really want to fly because there's not really any direct commercial flights to where I'm going, so I can take like a 2 hour flight and then I'd have to drive another hour and a half, and now I'm
yeah.
spending 4 or 5 hours anyway to fly. So am I really saving myself time? So anyway, that was the real impetus. But
That's awesome.
with a small plane, we can zip straight there, and there's like a little regional airport that's 3-4 miles away from where our
Isn't that
parents live in
so?
both places.
That's amazing. B, the thing that I've heard like very wealthy people state on repeat is they're like, look, and when I say very wealthy people, people that are worth 50 million plus, right? So they're high net worth
Yeah,
individuals, and they're like, dude, going to really expensive dining places will get old. Taking really extravagant vacations will get old. Having lots of nice stuff or really big houses, they're like, all that gets old. The thing that never gets old is flying private. They're like, that's
yeah,
always the
right.
game changer because the
Totally.
convenience of it is just so exceptionally different from flying commercial or driving. You're
Yeah,
just like, it's not,
night and
there's
day.
no comparison. And
Correct.
so, and you're not having to do TSA, like you're,
Yep.
and
Yep.
so,
We show up whenever we want to, and it's like, you know what?
yeah,
I don't want to go today. And it's like, okay, you just
yeah,
don't show up.
that's right.
You know,
Yeah,
even just being like, all right, well, we wanted to do this and we don't feel like it anymore, so we're not
yeah,
going to. And like that's it. Again, conversation. There's no like, well, we've got to call and cancel, and can I get a
right,
credit, and like all this
right.
stuff. It's just like, meh, not going to do
What's the this is like total nerd out on plane talk now, but what's the gallons burn rate per hour on the Cirrus?
on the Cirrus. I mean, it depends on how you fly the plane.
Sure.
I mean, it typically the way I
Average-ish.
fly it, my average is typically around 14-ish, 14 to
Oh,
15 gallons per hour.
that's great.
Yeah,
Oh,
I mean, you can really lean it out and fly it for best economy, and you could
sure.
probably get a little bit better. But that's kind of it tends to be average. I like to balance speed because the whole reason why we're flying is you want to get there
Right.
quickly. So I'm not necessarily you can fly it slow and you know econ and save gas, but it's not a huge savings.
I've got the Air Force flying above me right now, so
Nice, I
it's
love
quite
it.
loud. Yeah, that's fun, man. Like a lot of people don't understand uh because it's just never in their purview. So like my dad was a pilot. My grandfather, well, I say was, he still is. My grandfather
Nice.
was a pilot. My brother is a pilot. My father-in-law flew for the Navy for a long time. So like it's just in my family's origin stories in many ways that like, hey, we just fly places. And so like I remember
Solid.
when I got married, I like as a kid, I grew up flying standby on Delta all the time because my
Yep.
grandfather flew for Delta. So
Yep.
when we got married, my wife had maybe, this was true, she'd maybe flown like 2 or 3 times in their entire life.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
So it was
man.
like
And
all brand new to her.
it was totally brand new because they like, although her dad flew for the Navy, they grew up driving like they had an RV, they drove everywhere. And I was the exact opposite. And so like, I was like, yeah, I had 3 like round trip flights in my lifetime before I was 6 months old. Like true story, And
Nice.
so it's just, it's just so now it's so funny because whenever I go to an airport and I've been traveling to do speaking gigs and stuff, dude, I just spoke at a TEDx in Cleveland, by the way.
Oh, no way. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah,
That's
it's
huge.
super cool. Yeah, by the way, I need to get you. Do you ever want to speak? Is that a thing that you would like to do?
Yeah. No, I love doing it. I speak all the time. I try to do a lot of podcasts like this too. So
Okay.
yeah.
Well, dude, I got some speaking coaches and they have been absolutely great to work with. And dude,
Okay.
they got me they've got me charging like more money than I thought was possible to make for a speaking gig,
Really?
and we're booking them, and it's fun. So we'll talk about that offline in detail. But
I
I
love it. Yeah, yeah.
it's
I'm
something
curious to
that's
hear more info.
yeah, and it's one of my buddies, Ree Perez. He wrote a great book called Why Your Brand Should Be Gay. And
Okay.
he's a branding agency guy, and it just happens to be gay. And he owns a branding agency based out at they're remote, but he's in Austin. And his whole like the majority 90+% of his lead gen is him going to speak, and someone will be like, well,
Really?
yeah, because what'll happen is people will be like, well, hey, we'd love to have you come speak, you're amazing. And they'll say, okay, cool, well, my rate is 25K. And they'll say, oh, we can't afford that. And he goes, okay, well, what can you afford? 15,000 or whatever. He's like, cool,
Yeah.
I will do that if you let me do an ask from the stage, or you buy $10,000 in equivalent of my books, and we can give them out to everybody that's there as an add-on or whatever, right? Like he comes up with different
Yeah, yeah.
strategies to get it done. But when he does that, he'll go and he'll say, hey, listen, guys, I'll do a brand audit for you when he does his ask. It's $997 because everybody can swipe a card for under $1,000, generally speaking,
Yep.
employees included. And so
Yep.
then,
Makes sense.
hey, if you don't like it, if you're not satisfied, we'll just give you your full money back after the brand audit. And so, dude, he'll get like 20, 30, 40 of those 997 swipes. A couple of them will want a refund because they're like, I don't know. And then
Yeah.
he'll close them, but he'll close like a handful of them for like 50 grand a project, 100 grand a project.
Really?
And so, yes, it's his whole pipeline, man. And then he's
Wow.
making the money too from speaking. And I'm like, bro.
Right. Right.
So, anyways, Yeah, man, I think that you would enjoy some of the stuff that I'm up to, and we'll talk
I
more.
love it.
Yeah.
I want to hear more for sure. Now I'm intrigued.
Yeah, man. But I flew to Cleveland, and we had this experience where I'm in DFW flying to Cleveland, and uh the flight gets delayed, right? It's an American flight, gets delayed, there's a mechanical issue.
Yep.
And I go, okay, there's another flight that leaves in an hour and a half, and they've already delayed this for 45 minutes. I'm just
Right.
gonna switch. And so like I switched. My mom was with me because she was like, "Hey, I want to come see your TED Talk," which
Yeah.
was super cool.
Yeah.
And so I was like, "Hey, let's switch," and she's like, "Okay, cool." And so we, run to another terminal and the whole thing, and we took off before the other plane did, just
Right.
because I've done it so much. I know
Yep.
how this game works, and so I was like, "Yeah, let's just go get on the other flight, and it's gonna be
Right.
great." And it was.
That's the way to do it.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, because when there's a mechanical issue, it's like there's a very strong
Right.
likelihood you're not going to take off.
Correct. Yeah. It's like, who knows, right?
Yeah.
Like anytime the mechanics getting on the plane and
Yeah.
swinging wrenches, it's not good. Yeah.
Not a good time. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's okay. Okay. So you do all these cool hobby things. Do you also have practices or rhythms that you do on a daily, weekly, monthly basis that keep you the centered? Because my experiences of you are you're so centered, you're very calm. You may not I don't know if you feel that way, but that's my impression of you every time we talk. What do you do to help yourself be in a good flow state to run your business successfully?
Yeah, yeah. Well, so a couple things. So on the kind of, physical mental side, I definitely am super active just in general, kind of exercising, working out. Um, so really into run. I was into marathon running for a little bit. I had to pull the throttle back on that, honestly, just because it took up so much time.
Yeah.
But I still like to kind of exercise and work out every day and kind of stay in shape. So that's something that is super important to me. So I do that every day. I wake up and I exercise for at least an hour every day, just to kind of
Sick.
mentally refresh and get the endorphins flowing, get the dolphins flying in the brain. Um, so that's like one part of it, and then the other part from like a business standpoint too. I'm a big believer of surrounding yourself with an advisory council. No, I
Ooh.
not a board of directors, but an advisory council
Yeah.
that can basically be a sounding board for different areas of the business where you maybe lack expertise. And so that's really what I did. And so to your point, to kind of keep myself calm and like actually have something to someone or a team to bounce ideas off of, that's been
Yeah.
instrumental to me. So for IgnitePOST, I took a look at what are the most critical areas of our business, and for us it's basically sales, marketing, and operations. Those are kind of like the three big pillars of our business that we need to be very good at in order to be successful. There's a lot of other things, but those are kind of like the core. And so what I did is I went and I have an advisory council that I have someone that I trust and that knows a lot more about me than I do, that knows, kind of sales, and then same thing with marketing and same thing with operations, so that, whenever I have these questions that come up, or whenever I'm uncertain of things, I have folks who know me, know the business well, know what I'm trying to do, and can actually give me advice specifically on those things that I'm lacking. And so that's something that, one, I just recommend people do, but two, to actually use them on a regular basis. So,
Yeah.
my personal CEO coach, I probably talk with him. I'm actually going to talk to him right after this chat. So I talk with him once a week,
Oh wow.
just to kind of do a check-in. So very frequently, and that kind of it helps me for two reasons. One, for accountability, um, and then two is kind of just keeps me on track, just to kind of make sure that we're actually heading in the right direction. So it keeps me accountable and it keeps the trajectory of the business where we need it to be.
How did you find those people? Because like I get emails all the time from like join the advisory cloud and stuff, and I've done those in the past, and like it just wasn't. And maybe I didn't do it right, but like and they were wanting me to be an advisor, which was is totally up my alley. But how did you
Yep.
find people? What was your process of vetting them? Like tell me everything. I'm fascinated.
Yeah, yeah. So a lot of the folks that I actually found through a accelerator program that I went through. Actually, I took IgnitePOST through, and so from that, basically, you get access to a lot of various different kind of mentors who are uh, involved and they are looking to basically give back and they want to be involved with early stage businesses. So I use that as almost a kind of like a feeding vetting mechanism where you have this giant pool, and so you do a lot of almost like advisor dating, right? So that's
Yeah.
basically what I did is, I used that program as a way of, okay, I have this giant pool of folks that I know, want to be involved and want to help out early stage businesses.
Yep.
And then what I did is I went one step further and I kind of like broke them down into, okay, like let's say like I'm looking for, a marketing mentor. Well, what are some of the, who are some of the people out there? What's their background? What have they done? How well does that mesh? And then I kind of like narrowed the list there. And then same thing, just kind of, connected with them and worked with them over, a several month period just to figure out who do I work well with, who, is giving me advice that's actually actionable, that's impacting the business. And then once you kind of get your short list down from there, then I kind of, move to make the relationship a little bit more formal and actually set up, advisory agreements and all that fun
That's cool.
stuff.
So do you that seems like that's been a core practice for you to have that advisory board. Is that whenever you're talking to entrepreneurs that are younger in their journeys, is that something that you recommend, that you're just like, dude, surround yourself
100%,
with people?
100%.
Yeah.
Yep, for sure. And even, and in this company and in my previous company at CoachUp, literally, you don't have to put too much thought into it because the whole idea is to get value that you can use to build the business.
Right.
And so, we would literally have wine and pizza night with advisors, and like that's what we would do. Like before we had a
That's
formal
cool.
relationship and a formal agreement or anything set up, we would just reach out to a bunch of advisors that we really respected and wanted their help with, and say, hey, we're going to put together, we have some questions. We want to put all of you guys in a room because that's important, because you can get them to kind of feed off of each other. And,
Yeah.
when everybody works together, you get better ideas ultimately that come out of it. But literally we're like, hey, we have a bunch of bottles of wine. We're going to buy some pizza. We want to come up and just chat with you guys and talk over some of the things we're seeing in the business. And literally we would put together a very basic PowerPoint of, here's what's going well, here's what is not, here are the problems that we're having.
Yeah.
What do you think? What open-ended, what do you think about this, and what should we be doing? Curious to hear thoughts. And that was it. And that was, for when we were early, that was some of the best conversations that we ever had, was just getting a lot of smart people that we respected in a room, motivating them to show up there all together and
wine
seeing
and
what
pizza is
they have to say.
a great
Wine
draw.
wine and pizza did it. I think
Yeah.
we did one with burrito. We had like a burrito night.
That's great.
So any, no matter, you can put your own flair to it.
Yeah, that's so funny, man. I always say people gather well in buildings and around food. And that's
Correct.
just, and
Correct.
it's like there's something primal about it. I think that we want to. Early man would gather around in a cave or whatever. We'd gather around a fire. We'd be sharing a meal, and we want to do that. That's part of the ingrained thing in our bodies and our minds and our nature. It's like, yes, just lean in, like make it easy. That's cool, man. That's super, super cool. I love that. So, all right. So IgnitePOST is rocking and rolling. You guys are growing. Things are always changing. Like right now, there's all this concern about recession, about things that are on the downturn, which it looks like that's probably true. I think that the Federal Reserve has executed their plan to break the economy flawlessly.
Yeah.
And I have so many friends that are in office jobs that are like, they're looking. I put an ad out for a high level position yesterday, for one of the companies. I got 467 applicants. I spent $75 in ad spend, and I turned off the ad after 18 hours because I'm like, dude, what am I gonna do with this?
That's nuts. Yeah.
And I mean, like you have the typical, like, 50% of them are not qualified in any way, shape, or form. And so it's just like, no. But then there's like the other 50% that you're like, well,
like, all right,
damn.
Yeah.
So as you're kind of obviously you had you had CoachUp first, and there were times when that, I'm sure you went through different seasons of the economy doing well and whatever. But with
Yep.
IgnitePOST, you launched in 2019. Then there was that magic of pandemic and disaster.
Yep.
And now you're about to do another round in a very condensed time frame of just like, and I also know that like 20 into 2021 into 2022 was like the economy was humming, and so there was some hay to be made there. But what
Yep.
are the things that you're thinking about as you're going, okay, something's changing? Like, what are some of the steps that you're taking to just be like, okay, something's changing. We're gonna be okay. We
Yeah.
just need to take these thoughtful steps. Like, what are you thinking about? What are you considering as you are looking at the back half of, what, dude, it's almost June. Like, what in the world? The
I know. I
back
can't
half of
believe it.
2023?
I
What is
know,
happening?
right?
Yeah.
It feels like New Year's was yesterday.
Yeah.
No, that's a good question too. And actually, a lot of these things we learned in 2020 during the pandemic. But really, what we're doing, and it all comes down to how we're positioning and who we're really pursuing as the best customers for us, right?
Yeah.
Because you attract the folks that you kind of position for.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the biggest things that we learned from the pandemic is to position for folks that really value your service. So almost a blessing and a curse about IgnitePOST is, one, you could use us across the entire sales cycle. So you can use us for acquisition, activation, and retention.
Right.
And so there's a decision to be made there about how do you want to position the tools, like when should you use the tool. And then further, you can position it in terms of an industry of who do we want to go after, because there's a lot of folks that could use us again across that spectrum there. So for us, really, it comes down to, we learned this from the pandemic to position the product for businesses that are really going to value what we bring to the table.
Right.
If we were having this conversation in late 2019, I probably would have told you that like absolutely like the best thing for us is we were going to be a tool for enterprise sales teams for sales prospecting.
Right.
So, and that's still the case, right? Like it is a good fit for that tool. But what happened during the pandemic was everybody stopped working in an office. Everybody went back to to basically working remote. All of the enterprise sales companies we were working with had no idea anymore where people were. So all of the business that we had, because they couldn't send a physical note to a prospect, so they basically stopped. Like all those accounts evaporated.
Right.
So we basically made a pivot to working with brands, and so in the more in the e-commerce space of brands who knew who their customers were. They knew where they were because typically they've purchased product from them and shipped it to them. So they actually knew where the person lived. And it was important that they kept that person as a customer. And so that's kind of how we're positioning the product and how we're going after folks that have already made investments in a customer and they want to keep the customer longer, knowing that, okay, there might be a recession coming up.
Yep.
And it's more valuable to keep a customer that you have and to earn more from them than it is to go out and acquire more and more
100%.
new customers.
Yeah.
So that to kind of answer your question, that's what we're doing is how we're talking about the business, how we're positioning the value that we bring, and then the types of companies and brands that we really pursue to try to work with.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant too, man. And it's so, a lot of people don't think about the messaging, the positioning, whenever they're trying to solve for a problem in their marketing and their sales. And I love that you said that though, man. Because like most people are like, just do more lead gen, just spend more in ad dollars, and it's like, yeah, I mean you can, but eventually those dollars run out. Eventually those efforts run out. So it's that whole adage of, okay, work smarter, not harder. Like, okay, if I go to you and I say, look, it's 10 times more expensive to go get a new customer than it is to retain the one that you have. We help you retain your customers and get more out of them. So it's using your advertising and marketing dollars smarter instead of harder. And it's like, oh,
right.
Damn. Okay, so for a tenth of the price, I can get the same sort of engagement, perhaps, from a smaller pool. And now I'm going to have a customer that may be more loyal, because I love, and we haven't fully said what you guys do, but
oh yeah, we should talk about that. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's good. I mean, at the end, I want you to plug what you do, and I want people to find you and all that.
Okay.
But it's I love it, because one of the things that should be happening out of this podcast is, we need small businesses and ethical entrepreneurs like yourself to be successful. And one of the ways that I love doing this podcast, man, is that I'm like, yeah, I want people to come to you and be like, Arian, help me. Like
Yeah.
I need you, because I mean, look, full transparency, one of my companies works with Arian quite extensively. So like, and
Oh yeah.
IgnitePOST, and like, and so I'm a firm believer in what you do, but with the personalized AI robot handwritten notes, that's how I explain it. You probably
Yep.
explained it better than me, but there's this feeling of a personalized touch that you just can't. It's so hard to duplicate at
Correct.
scale, and you guys have figured out how to do it at scale in a way that like feels very genuine, very authentic. And we did a pretty big push for the coaching program that I'm doing, and
Yeah.
that it was really interesting to get emails from people, and they're like, I'm so thankful that you sent me a card. Or this happened too. This is so funny, man. So this woman was like, hey, I listened to, this is the power of like multi-channel marketing, right? She goes, I
Yeah.
listened to your podcast that you did with this other guy. I was just a guest 3 times since
Really?
October. And she goes, and because she goes, it's so valuable to me. It's so, so valuable. I'm like, thank you. And she said, and
Yeah.
then like I booked a meeting with you on a Friday, and on a Monday, I got a postcard from you. And it was the
Yeah.
it out. And then she was like,
Nice.
how did you do that? And I was like, well, look, man, you're like the perfect size agency for us to work with. Like
Yeah.
I'm so glad that worked out. And she was like, I was impressed. I was like, damn, USPS knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
But yeah,
That's
man,
it. That's the magic. That's how it works.
yeah. And I remember years ago, man, I had, because this is like my 3rd podcast show that I've started, maybe my 4th. And I had this guest on, and it was a outdoor company from New Zealand. And they like really hadn't
Okay.
broken into the US North American market in any way, shape, or form, but they wanted to come on the podcast. And I was interviewing a lot of people like that. And I was like, man, I love what you guys are up to. I love what you're doing. Any way that I could support you, I want to. And they're like so grateful. And I sent them a handwritten note.
Yep.
Because you didn't exist yet.
Right.
And so I sent them a handwritten note to New Zealand, and they both were just like, oh my word, I can't believe you did that. That was so kind.
Yeah.
And they said, hey, send us your address. So I sent them our address, and they sent me 2 $300 backpacks as a thank
Nice.
you. And I was like, dude,
Solid.
you know what I mean? And like, but there was a genuine connection because we saw
Yeah.
each other,
Totally.
Anyways, I digress on all that. But like
Yeah.
what you guys are up to, it's so timely for recession feelings that I love the messaging change, that's so subtle, but it's so significant. So now when someone lands on your website, they're like, this is exactly what I need.
Exactly.
Is that moving the dial for the sales team and for just the conversations that you're having overall?
Yeah, for sure. And it happens both on like the front and the back end. So
Yeah.
on the front end, positioning it so that we're attracting the kind of folks that we see more value in. And then on the back end too, it's also helping with our churn rate, right? Because
Right.
the folks that we are attracting and setting up are folks that are using us in that kind of more of a retention mechanism. And that's always going to be important no matter what. Whereas the folks that were, are just valuing us like, oh, I just, I need my phone to ring. And like, I don't care if if you're sending a handwritten card to my prospects, or if you're like jumping up on the table and doing a handstand and making the phone ring, So, just that subtle position, it helps both attract the right folks, and it helps keep them as one of our customers longer.
Yeah. And I think you guys are just in such a cool space. Like you're just in such an interesting, cool niche for the 2020s. I keep seeing like a desire from people for more personalization from marketing stuff.
Yeah.
In fact, at the TED
I
Talk,
believe it.
one of the guys that gave a TED Talk, dude, he was talking about the future of digital advertising.
Okay.
Absolutely super cool guy. Oh shoot, man, where's his agency located? I think it's in Chicago, dude. He's a guy that you would like to. His name's CJ, and he talked about how his agency is working with very, very large brands. So like one of them was FedEx, and it was like this ad. They're doing HTML5 ads, so it's like super responsive. So the ad, when you scrolled past it, was the back end of like a tractor trailer, you know, and so it like had the roll down door, and it said, can you stack these boxes as fast as a FedEx driver? And then it would roll up, right? Like as you're scrolling down, it would roll up, and the boxes would start to fall down in a Tetris. And so it was Tetris style boxes. This was genius.
Oh, that's hilarious.
So this is what they did. They're like, okay, so once you played the game, it would compare you to everyone else who had played, interacted with the ad. And then it had a share button so you could send it to your friends and be like, hey, let's play. And but it also prompted you to apply to be a FedEx driver, because that was the whole purpose of the ad. And so I forget the exact numbers, man, but it was something like, I think they spent like $100,000, or I can't, it was not a lot of money, but their return on it was like 220x as far as like ad spend impressions to like the ad spend dollars. Just because it was different and it was fun, and it was something that people were like, this is not something that I normally see, you know? And so I love that kind of stuff because it's so disruptive in the marketplace.
Totally.
Dude, he's somebody that remind me to connect you with him, because I think that you guys would have some really helpful overlap of some customers, perhaps.
Cool.
Yeah, I think that he's got some customers that would make sense for you to engage with. And I also think you have some customers that may make sense for him to engage with as well.
Cool. Yeah. I'll make a note, and I'll definitely follow up and remind you.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. All right, dude. So I've got one more question, and then I want you to tell us about where to find you and everything.
Okay. Love it.
And so here's the last question. This is the one that I always ask. And you can answer in a bunch of different ways, man. What are we doing here? Like, some people talk about their faith background, their spirituality. Some people talk about just like what they personally feel like their mission is. But like, what we're spinning on this
this
blue marble, and we're hurtling through space at insane speeds, and you and I are having this chat across the country. And it's like, what is this? What are we doing? So what are your thoughts on purpose, life? What is this, man?
Yeah. I mean, there's so many different ways to take that and like answer it. So I don't know that there's one answer. My answer is, what are we doing here? We're just trying to have a good time without hurting people. That's my my like general philosophy. You know, so I actually had this conversation with my fiance a while ago too, where, you know, she also was like, you know, there's so many things going on, and like how do you like not be worried about like all of these things that are, you know, could potentially be catastrophes or like doomsday and all this. And I was like, well, you know, the way you can look at it is, you know, in 1,000 years, how much are things really going to matter, right? Like, is anybody gonna care about it? Are they really gonna, you know? And so like, I try to use that kind of perspective to kind of put things in perspective for me of like, you know, did I send the wrong email, or did I like, you know, there's so many like things that you can really beat yourself up over. But from like a large perspective, it's like, listen, in 1,000 years, is somebody going to be like, Arian, man, that was a bad email to send. Why'd you do that? You know? So, you know, I think the whole idea is, you know, life is short, enjoy it, spend it with the ones that you love, and, you know, do no harm, to steal a motto from the medical space.
I love it, man. I love it. Well, dude, where can people find you? Talk about IgnitePOST. This is your time.
Yeah.
The floor is yours. Like, tell us how people can engage with you and what you're up to.
Yeah. So IgnitePOST, in case folks really want to dive in and like know what it is, basically what we are is, we're a service that helps brands create magic moments with real pen and ink handwritten notes. So we've got robotics that hold real Bic ballpoint pens to add warmth to each note. And then our software nicely integrates with CRM systems, e-commerce platforms, so that you can send perfectly timed and crafted moments that will actually drive people to action. So that's the kind of quick overview on IgnitePOST. The coolest thing is, if anyone's interested in checking us out, go to www.ignitepost.com, and you can have one of the robots actually write you a sample. So if folks want a free sample, hit our website. There's a button that says request a free sample, fill in your info, and we'll have one of the robot team members write you a real handwritten note and send it your way.
That's beautiful, man. Social media platforms? Do you have any that are you active on social personally?
I'm most active on LinkedIn. I
Okay,
use
cool.
Twitter sparingly here
Yeah,
and there,
yeah,
but I'm most active on LinkedIn.
cool.
Same thing with IgnitePOST. So our handle is just IgnitePOST or IgnitePOST HQ, depending on which social media platform you're looking at. But we're easy to find if you just search for IgnitePOST.
Guys, I'll just tell you, if you're listening to this, I cannot recommend IgnitePOST enough. I mean it when I say Arian is one of my favorite people on the planet, and everybody that I've met from your team is absolutely fantastic. They feel like, to me, y'all do feel like an extension of our team. Our ethos is just so good and so similar. And well, it's rare, man. Like, it's rare to find other people that are just like, I would be delighted to have split a bottle of wine with you and eat pizza any day. You know what I mean? I'm
Yeah.
just like, fucking hey, dude, like, let's go. And
By
it's
the way,
so,
we have to do that. Let's figure out
yes,
some time to do some pizza
yes,
and wine.
that would be amazing. That would be amazing. And so, like, if you're listening to this, you're like, I don't know, go get the free sample on the website. Go check them out. I'm telling you, we put a lot of our resources behind IgnitePOST, and it's money well spent. So, well, listen, Arian, thanks so much for being on, bro. This has been super fun just to like hang with you and catch up and talk about things. Thanks.
This has been awesome too. This has been my favorite podcast that I've done so far, just because we got into like so many nitty gritties of like
Yeah.
various things that I can tell you would never have come up in in other normal conversation.
Yeah, man. I think that's the whole goal, right? Like, we need to have different podcasts about business and humanizing the people behind them as opposed to glorifying them as some other person that's unattainable. And it's like,
Yeah,
dude, you and I are just dudes, and
yeah,
yeah. Awesome,
I
man.
love it. Well, thank you so much for having me. This has been awesome. I really appreciate it.
Likewise.